The message arrived at exactly 0600 hours, cutting through the silence of deep space like a knife. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant, watching the distress signal flash across his console in urgent red letters. His coffee grew cold in his hand as he read the words that would change everything. The Crethean Dominion had found Frontier's Edge, the small human colony, home to 15,000 settlers who had spent the last decade building farms and homes on a distant world, now faced complete destruction. The Empire gave them 3 days to surrender or die. The message was clear and brutal, translated from the alien language by their computer systems. The Cretheans did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They conquered, and they had conquered 47 other civilizations before setting their eyes on humanity. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had heard stories about the Dominion during his training at the Academy. They were an old empire, vast and powerful, with technology that had crushed every species they encountered. Their warships were massive, their crews trained for centuries in the art of warfare. They moved through the galaxy like a storm, consuming everything in their path. Lisa Grant, his tactical officer, looked up from her station. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her green eyes showed the same concern that Jake felt. She had run the numbers 3 times already, checking and rechecking the data. The results never changed. The nearest fleet is 21 days away, she said quietly. Even if they left right now at maximum speed, they would not reach Frontier's Edge in time. Jake nodded slowly. He had already done the calculations himself. The colony had 3 days. The fleet needed 3 weeks. The math was simple and terrible. Peter Hughes, the chief engineer, leaned against his console in the back of the bridge. He was a big man with broad shoulders and grease permanently stained under his fingernails. He had spent the last 6 months nursing the Valiant's experimental systems, coaxing performance from engines and weapons that were barely out of the prototype stage. He understood what Jake was thinking before anyone else spoke. "We are 2 days away at full speed," Peter said. His voice was calm, but his hands gripped the edge of his console. "We could get there before the Cretheans arrive." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Valiant was just one ship. According to the intelligence reports, the Crethean armada would come with at least 30 warships, maybe more. 40 vessels had destroyed an entire star system 6 months ago. The footage had been burned into every military officer's memory during briefings. The Cretheans did not take chances. They overwhelmed their enemies with pure force. Karen Blake, the medical officer, stepped onto the bridge from the corridor. She was younger than the rest of the senior staff, but her hands were steady and her mind was sharp. She had heard the alert and came to understand what was happening. She looked at Jake with questions in her brown eyes. "Are we really considering this?" she asked. Jake set down his coffee cup. He looked around at his crew. 85 people served on the Valiant. Most of them were young, fresh from the academy or technical schools. They had signed up to explore, to push humanity's boundaries among the stars. They had trained for combat, but none of them had ever fired a weapon in anger. The Valiant itself was new, built with technology that Earth scientists had developed in the last 5 years. The ship was fast and well-armed, but it had never been tested in real battle. 15,000 people will die if we do nothing, Jake said slowly. Men, women, children. The Cretheans do not take prisoners. They do not show mercy. They will burn that colony to ash. We cannot fight an entire armada, Lisa said. She was not arguing against action. She was simply stating the facts. The simulations show we would last maybe 10 minutes against those numbers. Jake walked to the main view screen. Outside, the stars stretched in infinite directions, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the colonists on Frontier's Edge were looking up at those same stars, wondering if anyone would come to save them. They had left Earth to build something new, to raise their families in peace. They deserved better than to be crushed by an empire that saw them as nothing more than obstacles. "The Cretheans expect us to send a fleet," Jake said. "They expect humanity to gather our forces and meet them with numbers. They have fought that kind of war 100 times. They know how to win that fight." He turned back to face his crew. His jaw was set, and his blue eyes showed determination that bordered on madness. "But what if we do not give them what they expect? What if instead of a fleet we send one ship? What if we fight them in ways they have never seen before?" Peter straightened up. A slow smile spread across his face. "The Valiant has systems that no other ship in the galaxy has. The new shielding, the railguns, the fusion antimatter hybrid drive. We are faster than anything they have. We hit harder. We can take punishment that would destroy their cruisers. On paper, Lisa added, none of this has been combat tested. We do not know if the shields will hold against sustained fire. We do not know if the weapons will perform as designed under real conditions. This is all theory. Then we test it, Jake said simply. We test it and we save those people. The bridge went quiet again. Everyone was doing their own calculations now. They were thinking about their families back on Earth. They were thinking about the odds. They were thinking about what it meant to fly into certain death for people they had never met. Danny Wright, the pilot, spoke up from his seat. He was barely 25, with sandy hair and a cocky grin that usually annoyed the senior officers. Right now he was not grinning. I can fly us there. I can fly us through anything they throw at us. You just tell me where you want the ship, Commander, and I will put it there. One by one, the other officers nodded. Lisa pulled up tactical projections on her screen, already planning attack patterns. Peter started calculating power distributions, figuring out how to squeeze every last bit of performance from the Valiant's systems. Karen headed back to the medical bay to prepare for casualties. The decision had been made without a formal vote. The crew had chosen their path. Jake opened a communication channel to the entire ship. His voice echoed through every corridor and compartment, reaching every member of the crew from the newest technician to the veteran sergeants. This is Commander Morrison. By now you have all heard about the situation at Frontier's Edge. A human colony is facing destruction by the Krethian Dominion. We are the only ship close enough to help them. I will not lie to you. The odds are not good. We will be facing an enemy fleet that outnumbers us 40-1. Many military analysts would call this suicide. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. But I believe in this ship. I believe in this crew. I believe that humanity has something the Krethians have never encountered before. We do not just have better technology. We have courage. We have adaptability. We have the willingness to stand up for what is right, even when the odds are impossible. In 3 hours, we will set course for Frontier's Edge. Anyone who wishes to object can do so now. I will not force anyone to take this risk. He waited. The communication channel remained silent except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. No one objected. No one asked to be left behind. Then let's get to work, Jake said. We have 2 days to prepare. I want every system checked and double-checked. I want every weapon loaded and ready. I want simulation runs on every tactical scenario we can imagine. When we arrive at Frontier's Edge, we will show the Krethian Dominion what it means to face humanity. The crew erupted into action. Engineers swarmed through the ship's corridors, running diagnostics and making adjustments. Weapons officers loaded the railgun magazines with tungsten core projectiles. The tactical team built computer models of Krethian ships based on intelligence reports, looking for weaknesses. The ship's automated systems came alive, preparing for battle. Jake remained on the bridge, watching his crew work with fierce pride. He knew the risks. He knew that many of them might not survive what was coming. But he also knew that this was what they had signed up for. This was what it meant to serve. Not glory or medals or recognition, just the simple, terrible duty of standing between innocent people and those who would harm them. The Valiant's engines flared to full power. The ship turned toward Frontier's Edge and accelerated into the darkness. Behind them, Earth continued to spin, unaware that one of its ships was racing toward a battle that would change galactic history. Ahead, the Krethian armada prepared for an easy conquest, expecting either surrender or a desperate last stand from orbital defenses. Neither side knew that everything was about to change. The Empire expected an army, but they would face something far more dangerous: a single human warship with a crew that refused to give up. The Krethian armada emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal locusts. 40 warships materialized in perfect formation around Frontier's Edge, their dark hulls reflecting the pale light of the system's star. Each vessel was massive, designed to inspire fear in any species that saw them. The largest ship, the Dominator, sat at the center of the formation like a predator among its pack. War Master Zekthar stood in the command center of his flagship, his 3 eyes scanning the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human colony lay before him, defenseless and primitive. A few orbital satellites, some basic communication arrays, no weapons platforms, no defensive fleet, nothing that could challenge even a single Krethian cruiser, let alone 40 warships. His scaled skin rippled with amusement. The humans were a young species, barely capable of faster-than-light travel. They had stumbled into the galaxy like children wandering into a forest full of predators. The Dominion had given them the standard ultimatum more out of habit than necessity. Surrender was always preferable to conquest. Slaves were more useful than corpses after all. Scan the system, Zekthar ordered. His voice was deep and resonant, carrying the authority of 2 centuries of military service. I want to know if the humans have hidden any surprises. His sensor operator worked the controls, sending scanning waves throughout the solar system. The results came back quickly. A few mining stations in the asteroid belt, some cargo vessels near the outer planets, the colony itself with its small cities and farmland. Nothing threatening. Nothing unexpected. The system is clear, War Master, the operator reported. No military vessels detected. Zekthar nodded. It was always the same. The conquered species always hoped that help would arrive. They always believed someone would save them. But help never came in time. The Dominion had perfected the art of the quick strike, hitting before defenders could mobilize. By the time any human fleet arrived, Frontier's edge would already belong to the Empire. Open a channel to the colony, he ordered. Let them know their time is up. They have 1 hour to begin evacuation procedures before we commence bombardment of military and industrial targets. But before the communication officer could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the Dominator. The tactical display lit up with a new contact. A ship had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Identify that vessel, Zekthar snapped. The sensor operator magnified the image. A single human warship, sleek and angular, with hull markings that identified it as the USS Valiant. The ship was small compared to Crethean standards, maybe a quarter the size of one of their cruisers. It hung in space alone, its weapons dark, making no aggressive moves. Zekthar stared at the display in confusion. 1 ship? The humans had sent 1 ship to face his entire armada? It made no sense. No military commander could be that foolish. Perhaps it was a messenger vessel, coming to negotiate surrender terms. But even that seemed strange. Why send a warship instead of a diplomatic craft? The answer came moments later. The human ship opened a communication channel that broadcast across all frequencies. Every Crethean vessel received it. Even the colony below picked up the signal. Crethean forces, this is Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Valiant. The voice was calm and steady, showing no fear. You are in violation of human territorial space. I am requesting that you withdraw peacefully. Humanity has no desire for conflict, but we will defend our people. Please leave this system immediately. The command center of the Dominator fell silent. Then slowly Zekthar began to laugh. It was a harsh, barking sound that echoed off the metal walls. His officers joined in, their amusement genuine. The audacity was incredible. The foolishness was breathtaking. 1 ship demanding that an entire armada retreat. It was like an insect threatening a dragon. This human thinks he can order me around, Zekthar said, still chuckling. He thinks his single little warship is a threat to the might of the Dominion. We must teach him the error of his arrogance. He turned to his tactical officer. Send 5 cruisers. Destroy that ship quickly. Make it spectacular. I want the colonists below to see what happens to those who defy us. Then we will proceed with the invasion as planned. 5 Crethean cruisers broke formation and accelerated toward the Valiant. Each ship was twice the size of the human vessel, armed with plasma cannons that could melt through reinforced hull plating. They moved with confidence, their commanders eager to be the ones who drew first blood in this brief, pointless engagement. On the bridge of the Valiant, Jake watched the 5 ships approach. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady on the arms of his command chair. Lisa worked her tactical console, feeding data to the ship's defensive systems. Danny sat at the pilot controls, his fingers dancing over the interface, ready to move at a moment's notice. They are breaking into attack formation, Lisa reported. Weapons charging. They will be in firing range in 30 seconds. Hold position, Jake ordered. Let them come to us. I want to see what they can do before we show them what we can do. The seconds ticked by. The Crethean cruisers spread out, surrounding the Valiant from multiple angles. It was a standard tactic, designed to overwhelm a target with crossfire. No matter how good the human ship's shields were, they could not protect from all directions at once. Or so the Cretheans believed. The first plasma volley struck the Valiant from 3 sides simultaneously. Bright orange bolts of superheated matter slammed into the ship's hull. On any normal vessel, the shields would have collapsed instantly. The plasma would have melted through the armor, boiling away metal and flesh alike. The ship would have died in seconds, but the Valiant's shields held. The revolutionary new shielding technology, developed by Earth's best scientists, absorbed the plasma energy and dispersed it across the shield surface. The ship rocked slightly from the impact, but no damage registered on Jake's console. The shields had not even dropped below 90% strength. On the Krethian cruisers, confusion spread through the command centers. Their sensors showed the human ship intact. No hull breaches. No systems failures. The target was completely undamaged. "Fire again," the lead Krethian captain ordered. "Full power. All batteries." The 5 cruisers unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons fired in rapid succession, bathing the Valiant in enough destructive energy to obliterate a small moon. The space around the human ship lit up like a sun. Surely nothing could survive that concentrated assault. But when the light faded, the Valiant remained. Its shields flickered slightly, down to 70% now, but still holding. The ship had not moved. It sat in space like a fortress, absorbing punishment that should have vaporized it. "Now," Jake said quietly. "Lisa, fire at will." Danny, evasive pattern Delta. "Let's show them what we brought." The Valiant came alive. Its engines flared with brilliant blue light as Danny sent the ship into motion. The vessel moved with speed and grace that seemed impossible for something made of metal and machinery. It danced between plasma bolts, rolling and spinning in ways that Krethian ships with their massive bulk could never match. The railguns fired. Unlike plasma weapons, railguns used electromagnetic acceleration to launch solid projectiles at a fraction of light speed. The tungsten core rounds crossed the distance to the nearest Krethian cruiser in less than a second. The first round punched through the alien ship's shields as if they were not there. The second round tore into the hull, penetrating deep into the vessel's interior. The third round struck the engine section. The Krethian cruiser shuddered and went dark. Emergency lights flickered on as backup power kicked in. But the ship was dead in space, its main systems destroyed. The crew scrambled to contain hull breaches and prevent a reactor meltdown. "Target 2, Lisa said, her voice tight with concentration. "Firing." The railgun spoke again. Another Krethian cruiser took the devastating impacts. This one lost its weapons array entirely. The forward section of the ship simply gone in a cloud of debris. The crew ejected in escape pods, abandoning their crippled vessel. The remaining 3 Krethian cruisers tried to regroup, but the Valiant gave them no chance. Danny flew the ship through their formation, too fast for their targeting systems to track. The human vessel fired precisely, each shot calculated to disable rather than destroy. Jake had made that decision clear. They were here to protect the colony, not to start a genocide. Every Krethian who survived would spread word of what happened here. Within 2 minutes, 3 more cruisers were drifting hulks. The 5th and final ship, seeing the destruction around it, turned and fled back toward the main fleet at maximum speed. Its captain had no shame about running. He just wanted to survive long enough to report what he had witnessed. Zekthar watched the tactical display with growing disbelief. 5 cruisers, 5 of his finest ships, defeated by a single human vessel in less time than it took to brew a cup of bitterroot tea. It was impossible. It defied everything he knew about warfare, about technology, about the natural order of the galaxy. He zoomed in on the image of the Valiant. The ship showed minor scoring on its hull from the plasma impacts, but it was essentially undamaged. Its weapons were still active. Its engines still burned bright. It was waiting, hovering between his fleet and the colony like a guardian angel. Zekthar stared at the tactical display for a long moment, his 3 eyes narrowing as he considered his options. Retreat was unthinkable. In 200 years of military service, he had never withdrawn from a battle. The Dominion did not retreat. They did not show weakness. Any war master who fled from combat would be stripped of rank and exiled, his name erased from the military records. But he was also not a fool. The human ship had proven itself dangerous. Underestimating it again would cost more lives and more ships. He needed to approach this carefully, with the full weight of his forces and proper tactics. "Prepare half the fleet for coordinated assault," he ordered. 20 ships. I want them in staggered formation, overlapping fields of fire. The human vessel is fast, but it cannot dodge everything. We will overwhelm it with sustained bombardment until its shields collapse. His tactical officer worked quickly, organizing the attack. 20 Krithian warships moved into position, forming a sphere around the projected path between the Valiant and the colony. No matter which way the human ship turned, it would face concentrated fire from multiple angles. This time, they would not send a small force to be picked off. This time, they would use their numerical advantage properly. Jake watched the Krithian fleet reorganize. Lisa's console showed the enemy formations taking shape, and her expression was grim. She ran the numbers through the tactical computer 3 times, hoping for a different result each time. The conclusion remained the same. "We cannot win a direct fight," she said quietly. 20 ships firing together will drain our shields in minutes, maybe less. Once the shields fail, we have maybe 30 seconds before hull integrity fails. Then we do not fight directly, Jake replied. He pulled up a holographic map of the star system, focusing on the dense asteroid belt that orbited between the 3rd and 4th planets. Thousands of rocks, some as small as cars, others as large as cities tumbling through space in chaotic patterns. We use the terrain. We make them come to us where their numbers mean less. Peter's voice came over the communication system from the engine room. "Commander, if you are thinking what I think you are thinking, I need to warn you that flying through an asteroid field at combat speeds is not recommended by any safety protocol ever written. Good thing we are not following safety protocols today," Jake said with a slight smile. "Danny, can you fly us through that belt?" The young pilot cracked his knuckles and grinned. "Sir, I can fly this ship through the eye of a needle if you need me to. Those asteroids are going to be our best friends. Then take us in. Full speed. Lisa, prepare the drone fighters for deployment. I want them harassing the enemy while we reposition. Make the Krithians think we are everywhere at once." The Valiant's engines flared bright as Danny pushed them to maximum power. The ship accelerated toward the asteroid belt, crossing the distance in seconds. The Krithian fleet followed, their larger ships moving more slowly but maintaining their coordinated formation. They were cautious now, respecting the threat that the human vessel represented. As the Valiant entered the asteroid field, the environment changed completely. Rocks of all sizes filled the space around them, tumbling and spinning in their endless orbits. Danny's hands moved constantly over the controls, making hundreds of micro-adjustments every second. The ship slipped between asteroids with meters to spare, rolled to avoid a spinning rock the size of a mountain, dove under a cluster of smaller debris. The Krithian ships entered the field more carefully. Their larger size made navigation difficult. They had to slow down to avoid collisions, breaking up their tight formation. The sphere of coordinated firepower began to fragment as ships fell behind or took different paths through the obstacles. "Deploy drones," Jake ordered. Hatches opened along the Valiant's hull, and 50 small automated fighters shot out into space. Each drone was barely larger than a coffin, armed with a single laser cannon and basic maneuvering thrusters. They were not powerful enough to destroy a Krithian warship, but that was not their purpose. They scattered through the asteroid field, using the rocks for cover, and began firing on any enemy ship that came into range. The drones were not trying to inflict serious damage. They targeted sensors, communication arrays, weapon mounts. They distracted and annoyed, forcing the Krithian crews to split their attention between the asteroids, the drones, and the Valiant itself. It was like being attacked by a swarm of angry insects. Each sting alone was not dangerous, but together they created chaos. A Krithian cruiser tried to pursue the Valiant through a particularly dense section of the field. The ship's captain was aggressive, determined to bring his weapons to bear on the human vessel. But he pushed too hard, moved too fast. His ship clipped an asteroid, the impact throwing off his trajectory. Before he could correct, a second, larger rock smashed into his starboard side. The hull buckled. Atmosphere vented into space. The cruiser tumbled out of control, colliding with several more asteroids before its crew managed to stabilize it enough to retreat. Lisa had been analyzing the Krithian ships during the battle. Her console displayed detailed scans of their shield systems, weapon arrays, and power signatures. She was looking for patterns, for weaknesses, for anything that could give them an advantage. And finally she found something. "Commander, I have something," she said, her voice excited. "The Krithian shields use a rotating frequency pattern. It makes them strong against sustained fire because the frequency keeps changing. But there is a brief moment during each rotation where the shields are vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses. If we time it right, We can knock out their shields with EMP weapons and then hit them with railguns while they are exposed. Jake leaned forward. How brief is the window? 0.3 seconds. But our targeting computer can track it. We just need to get close enough for the EMP to work effectively. Do it. Target the nearest ship and show me how this works. The Valiant emerged from behind a large asteroid, coming face to face with a Krethian destroyer at close range. The enemy ship immediately opened fire, plasma bolts crossing the short distance in an instant. But Danny was already moving, rolling the Valiant sideways while accelerating. The plasma shots missed by meters. Lisa's fingers flew over her controls. She launched an electromagnetic pulse weapon, a sphere of compressed energy that expanded as it traveled. The pulse struck the Krethian ship at the exact moment its shields rotated to a vulnerable frequency. The shields flickered and died, leaving the hull exposed. The railguns fired immediately. 3 tungsten rounds struck the destroyer's engine section. The ship went dark, power failing across all systems. It began to drift, helpless in the asteroid field. The crew would live, but their ship was out of the fight. It works, Lisa said, a fierce smile on her face. We can do this. We can beat them. For the next several hours, the battle continued through the asteroid field. The Valiant appeared and disappeared like a ghost, using the rocks for cover, striking from unexpected angles. Each time Lisa used her new technique to disable Krethian shields and the railguns finished the job. Danny flew the ship with impossible skill, threading through gaps that seemed too small, making turns that should have torn the vessel apart. The Krethian commanders grew frustrated. Their ships were being picked off one by one, and they could not bring their full firepower to bear. The asteroids protected the human vessel, and their own larger ships were vulnerable in this environment. They tried to spread out to cover more area, but that just made them easier targets. They tried to concentrate their forces, but the human ships slipped through their formations like water. In the engine room, Peter and his teams worked without rest. The constant maneuvering was pushing the engines beyond their design limits. Heat built up in the reactor core. Power fluctuations caused systems to fail and need quick repairs. Peter moved through the engineering spaces with a wrench in one hand and a diagnostic tablet in the other, fixing problems as fast as they appeared. We are running hot, he reported to the bridge. The engines are at 130% capacity. We can maintain this for maybe another 6 hours, then we need to cool down or risk a catastrophic failure. Understood, Jake replied. We will make those 6 hours count. In the medical bay, Karen treated the few crew members who had been injured by the constant shaking and sudden maneuvers. A technician had broken his arm when he was thrown against a wall. A sensor operator had a concussion from hitting her console. Nothing critical, nothing that would stop the fight, but each injury reminded Karen of how dangerous this was. The ship might be winning, but they were still in deadly peril. On the Dominator, Zekthar watched his fleet shrink. 18 ships, 15 ships, 12 ships still fighting. The rest were crippled or destroyed, floating hulks in the asteroid field. His claws dug furrows in the arms of his command chair. This was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be a simple conquest. Instead, he was being humiliated by a single enemy vessel. Pull back, he ordered finally. Get our ships out of that death trap. We regroup in open space and find another way to deal with this human. The Krethian ships began to withdraw from the asteroid field, carefully navigating their way back to open space. The Valiant did not pursue. The bridge of the Valiant was quiet except for the steady hum of the engines and the occasional beep of a console. The crew had been fighting for 18 hours straight, taking turns sleeping at their stations when they could, surviving on coffee and determination. Jake stood at the main view screen, watching the Krethian fleet in the distance. They had regrouped in open space, their formation tight and defensive. They were planning something. Lisa studied the enemy positions, her eyes red from exhaustion. She had analyzed every pattern, every movement, trying to predict what Zekthar would do next. The War Master had proven himself adaptable, learning from each engagement. That made him dangerous in ways that a predictable enemy never could be. They have been sitting there for 3 hours, she said, just waiting, scanning us. They are studying our tactics, trying to figure out our weaknesses. Have they found any? Jake asked. Too many, Lisa admitted. We are down to 40% shield capacity with limited recharge. The engines are overheating. We are low on railgun ammunition. We have maybe 2 more fights like the last one before we are running on empty, and they still have 23 functional warships. Jake nodded slowly. He had known this moment would come. They had fought brilliantly, exceeded every expectation, but they were still just one ship. Eventually, the numbers would catch up with them. Eventually, their luck would run out. "What do you think they will do?" he asked. Lisa pulled up a tactical projection. "If I were Zekthar, I would change targets. We have positioned ourselves between the fleet and the colony. We are protecting the colonists. So if he wants to force us into a bad position, he would threaten what we are protecting." As if responding to her words, the Krethian fleet suddenly moved. All 23 ships turned and accelerated, not toward the Valiant but toward Frontier's edge itself. They were going to bypass the human warship entirely and attack the defenseless colony directly. Jake felt ice form in his stomach. It was a simple tactic, brutal but effective. The Valiant could not be in two places at once. If they stayed in the asteroid belt, the colony would be destroyed. If they moved to protect the colony, they would have to leave their defensive position and face the entire fleet in open space where the Krethians' numerical advantage would be overwhelming. "Danny, get us to the colony," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." "That is what he wants," Lisa said. "He is forcing us to fight on his terms." "I know. But we do not have a choice. We cannot let 15,000 people die while we hide in the rocks." The Valiant shot out of the asteroid belt like a missile, its engines burning at full power. The ship crossed the distance to Frontier's edge in minutes, positioning itself directly between the incoming fleet and the planet. The colony's orbital station sent grateful messages, but Jake could not respond. He was too focused on the approaching enemy. The Krethian ship spread into an attack formation. They knew the human vessel was fast, so they created overlapping fields of fire that would be impossible to avoid. They knew its shields were weakened, so they prepared to focus their bombardment. This time there would be no asteroids to hide behind. This time there would be no clever tactics. Just raw firepower against endurance. "All ships commence firing," Zekthar ordered from the Dominator. "I want that human vessel destroyed now. 23 warships opened fire simultaneously." The space between them and the Valiant lit up with plasma bolts, missiles, and particle beams. It was a tsunami of destructive energy, enough firepower to crack a small moon, and all of it was aimed at one ship. The Valiant's shields flared brilliant blue as the weapons struck. Danny tried to maneuver, but there was nowhere to go. The shots came from too many directions. The shield strength dropped rapidly. 40%, 30%, 20%. "Hull breaches on decks 7 and 9, Lisa reported, her voice strained. "Emergency bulkheads are sealing. We have casualties." Jake gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship rocked under the impacts. Through the view screen he could see the Krethian fleet advancing, their weapons never stopping. Behind him, behind the Valiant, the colony waited. 15,000 lives depending on them to hold just a little longer. Peter's voice came through the communication system, background alarms blaring. "Shield generators are failing. We need to reduce power to weapons if we want to maintain any defensive capability." "No," Jake said. "Keep the weapons hot. If we are going down, we are taking some of them with us." But he knew it was not enough. The Valiant could disable maybe 3 more ships before the shields collapsed completely. Then the railguns would fall silent as the hull was torn apart. They had fought well, but the math was finally catching up with them. They were going to lose, unless they tried something desperate. Jake pulled up the ship's schematic on his console, focusing on the experimental weapon systems. One weapon had never been tested in combat. One weapon that the engineers had warned might destroy the Valiant as easily as it would destroy an enemy. The graviton beam. The theory was simple. Generate a focused beam of gravitational force that would create localized spatial distortions. The effect would crush shields, buckle hulls, and disrupt any system that relied on stable space. The weapon had passed all laboratory tests, but the power requirements were enormous. It would drain the ship's reactor completely. If anything went wrong, the reactor could go critical and turn the Valiant into a small sun. "Lisa," Jake said quietly, "bring the graviton beam online. Target the Dominator." She turned to stare at him. "Commander, that weapon has never been fired outside of a controlled environment. We do not know if it will work. We do not even know if it is safe. We are out of options. If we do nothing, we die and the colony dies. If we try this, maybe we have a chance." Lisa hesitated, then nodded. Her fingers moved across her console, initializing systems that had been dormant since the Valiant left Earth. Warning messages appeared on every screen. The computer protested the activation, listing dozens of reasons why this was a bad idea. Lisa overrode them all. "Graviton beam charging," she announced. "Power draw is extreme. We are pulling energy from everything. Life support is switching to emergency reserves. Shield strength is dropping faster." The Valiant shuddered as the weapon drew power. The lights on the bridge dimmed. The constant hum of the engines changed pitch. Every system in the ship diverted energy to the graviton beam, feeding the weapon's insatiable appetite. Peter watched his reactor monitors with growing alarm. The temperatures were spiking into the red zone. The containment fields were fluctuating. If they pushed any harder, the reactor would breach and turn the engine room into a radioactive tomb. But he trusted Jake. He trusted that the commander knew what he was doing, so he kept the power flowing, his hand hovering over the emergency shutdown controls, ready to hit them the instant the weapon fired. Zekthar saw the energy readings from the human ship spike on his sensors. His tactical officer shouted warnings about unusual power signatures, about spatial distortions forming around the Valiant's bow. He did not understand what was happening, but his instincts screamed danger. "All ships evasive action," he ordered.
"Get away from that vessel!"
But it was too late. The graviton beam fired. A lance of invisible force shot across space, crossing the distance to the Dominator in an instant. The Krathian flagship's shields collapsed like wet paper. The beam struck the hull and reality bent. Metal screamed as it was compressed by gravitational forces that should not exist. Systems failed throughout the ship as the distortion spread. The massive warship buckled, its spine breaking in 3 places. Secondary explosions rippled through the hull as fuel lines ruptured and ammunition stores cooked off. The beam cut off. The Valiant went dark. Every system shut down simultaneously as the reactor entered emergency safety mode. The ship drifted in space as dead as the crippled cruisers floating in the asteroid belt. On the bridge, emergency lights flickered on. Jake was thrown against his harness as gravity failed. Around him, consoles sparked and went dark. The main view screen was black. The only sounds were labored breathing and distant alarms. "Status," Jake managed to say. "Everything is offline," Lisa reported from her dark console. "Reactor shut down. Shields down. Weapons down. We are drifting." "Engineering report," Jake called out. Peter's voice came back, faint and strained. "The reactor is intact but in emergency cooldown mode. It will take at least 10 minutes to restart even basic systems. Right now we are a dead ship, Commander. 10 minutes. It might as well have been 10 years. The Krathian fleet could destroy them 100 times over in 10 minutes. Jake looked at the dark view screen, wishing he could see what was happening outside. Were the enemy ships moving in for the kill? Was Zekthar preparing to fire on the defenseless colony? The seconds crawled by in darkness. The crew sat at their stations, helpless, waiting for the impacts that would end everything. Jake thought about the colonists below, about his crew, about how close they had come to winning. He thought about the message he would have sent to Earth if he had time. "We fought well. We made them pay for every meter of space. Tell our families we did not give up." But the impacts never came. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Slowly, the emergency systems began to restore basic functions. Computer. Jake took a deep breath and straightened his uniform. Despite the exhaustion, despite the fear still coursing through his veins, he needed to appear calm and in control. The next few minutes would determine whether this battle ended with peace or more bloodshed. "Open the channel," he ordered. The view screen flickered, and Zekthar's image appeared. The War Master was clearly injured. Burns marked his scaled skin, and one of his 3 eyes was swollen shut. He sat in what looked like an emergency command station, the ruins of the Dominator's bridge visible behind him. Despite his injuries, he held himself with the dignity of a warrior who had lived 2 centuries. "Commander Morrison," Zekthar said. His voice was strained but steady. "I am requesting a ceasefire. This battle serves no purpose. We have both demonstrated our capabilities. Further fighting will only result in more death." Jake studied the alien commander carefully. There was no deception in his words, only weariness and something that might have been respect. This was not a trick. Zekthar genuinely wanted the fighting to stop. "I agree," Jake said, "on one condition. Your fleet leaves this system immediately and transmits a message to the Dominion leadership. The colony at Frontier's Edge is under human protection. Any future attempt to attack it will be met with the same response you received today." Zekthar's remaining functional eyes studied Jake through the screen. You have won this battle, human. You have earned the right to make demands. But you surprise me. I expected you to demand our surrender, to take prisoners, to claim our ships as trophies. Why do you simply ask us to leave? Because humanity did not come to the stars to conquer, Jake replied. We came to explore, to build, to find our place among the other species. We do not want your empire. We do not want your territory. We just want to live in peace. But we will defend ourselves and our people when threatened. Let the Dominion know that. A long silence followed. Zekthar seemed to be processing this information, comparing it against everything he knew about warfare and conquest. Finally, he spoke again. In 200 years of military service, I have conquered 47 species. Every one of them either surrendered or fought to the last breath. None ever showed mercy to the defeated, yet you offer us safe passage. You offer to help repair our ships. Why? Because you are not our enemy, Jake said. The Dominion is not our enemy. We were strangers who met in violence, but that does not mean we must remain enemies. If you are willing to leave in peace, then we are willing to help you do so safely. Peter's voice interrupted from the engineering section. Commander, I have basic systems online. I can send repair teams to the Krathian vessels if you approve. Jake looked at Zekthar. We have engineers who can help stabilize your damaged ships. Medical personnel who can treat your wounded. We offer this assistance freely, with no conditions except that you honor the ceasefire. The War Master was silent for another moment. Then slowly something changed in his expression. It was subtle, hard to read on an alien face, but Jake thought it might be the beginning of understanding. I accept your terms, Zekthar said. The Krathian fleet will withdraw from this system. We will transmit your message to the Dominion Council, and we will accept your offer of assistance. You have taught me something today, Commander Morrison, something I did not expect to learn at this stage of my life. What is that? Jake asked. That strength is not just the ability to destroy. It is also the ability to show restraint when you have won. True power is not crushing your enemies. It is giving them a reason to become something other than enemies. The communication ended. Over the next several hours, as the Valiant system slowly came back online, a strange sight unfolded in the space around Frontier's edge. Human engineers in spacewalk suits moved between Krathian vessels, helping to seal hull breaches and stabilize damaged systems. Karen and her medical team transferred to the worst damaged ships, treating alien wounded with the same care they would give human patients. The Krathians watched this with confusion and growing amazement. Their culture knew only dominance and submission. The strong conquered the weak. The victors took everything from the defeated. But these humans, after winning a battle that should have been impossible, were helping their enemies. They shared medical supplies. They provided technical assistance. They treated the Krathian wounded with gentleness and respect. On one of the damaged cruisers, Karen worked alongside a Krathian medical officer to treat severe burns on a young warrior. The alien doctor watched her technique with interest, noting how she carefully cleaned the wounds despite the difficulty of working with an unfamiliar physiology. Why do you help us? The Krathian doctor asked. We came to destroy your colony. We would have killed every human on that planet without mercy, yet you risk yourself to save our wounded. Karen looked up from her work, her eyes meeting the aliens. Because that is what we do. We help people who need help. It does not matter who they are or what they have done. When someone is injured, we heal them if we can. That is what being human means to us. The Krathian doctor was silent, absorbing this philosophy that was so foreign to everything his culture believed. On the bridge of the Valiant, Jake received a transmission from the colony below. The governor's face appeared on screen, tears streaming down her cheeks. Commander Morrison, I do not have words to thank you. You saved us all. Every man, woman, and child on this planet owes you their lives. We will never forget what you did here. We were just doing our duty, Jake replied, though he felt emotion welling up in his own chest. Protecting human lives is why we serve. I am just glad we arrived in time. The historians will study this battle for centuries, the governor said. One ship against an armada. It seems impossible. It was not just one ship, Jake corrected gently. It was a crew of 85 people who refused to give up. It was engineers who kept our systems running past their limits. It was doctors who patched us up so we could keep fighting. It was pilots and gunners and communications officers all working together. The ship is just metal and circuits. It was the people who made the difference. 3 days later, the Crethean fleet was ready to depart. The damaged ships had been stabilized enough for the journey home. The wounded had been treated. The dead had been honored according to Crethean custom, their names recorded so their families could mourn them properly. Zekthar made one final transmission before his fleet left the system. He looked better now, his injuries healing, though he would carry the scars from this battle for the rest of his life. Commander Morrison, I am returning to Dominion space to make my report. I will tell the Council everything that happened here. I will tell them about your ship's capabilities, yes. But more importantly, I will tell them about your people's character. You could have destroyed my entire fleet. You could have taken prisoners or demanded tribute. Instead, you showed us mercy and helped us when we were helpless. This is not something my people understand, but perhaps we should learn to understand it. He paused, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say next. I have spent 200 years conquering other species. I thought I understood the galaxy and how power worked. But you have shown me that I was wrong. There are different kinds of strength, different ways to win. The Dominion will have to decide what your existence means for our empire. But I will tell them this. Humanity is not like the other species we have encountered. You are something new, something we need to approach with wisdom rather than force. I hope your council listens, Jake said. Humanity is willing to be friends with the Dominion. We are willing to trade, to share knowledge, to coexist peacefully, but we will also defend ourselves if threatened. Let your leaders know that both options are available to them. I will tell them, Zekthar promised. And Commander, I have one personal message. You fought with honor today. You showed courage and skill that would be respected in any culture. If circumstances were different, I think we could have been allies. Perhaps someday we still will be. The transmission ended. The Crethean fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished, heading back toward the heart of their empire. The space around Frontier's edge was suddenly quiet, empty except for the Valiant and the orbital stations around the colony. Jake stood on the bridge and looked out at the stars. His crew was exhausted, sleeping at their stations or in the medical bay. The ship was scarred and battered, with repairs that would take months to complete properly. But they had survived. They had won, and more than that, they had shown the galaxy what humanity stood for. Lisa approached him holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jake and took a sip from her own. We are going to be famous, you know, she said. The news services will make us heroes. They will write songs about what happened here. I just want to go home, Jake admitted. See my family. Sleep in a real bed. Forget about battles and armadas for a while. Do you think the Cretheans will keep the peace? Lisa asked. Or will they come back with more ships looking for revenge? Jake thought about Zekthar's words, about the look in the War Master's eyes during their final conversation. I think we changed something today. Maybe not the whole Dominion, but we changed one War Master's mind, and he will tell others what he learned here. That is how change starts. One person at a time,